The Daily Monitor in Uganda, and this is your headline today. Budget inflated by 500 billion shillings, that is Ugandan shilling, whereas the Accountant General stood by the 5.4 trillion shillings allocation. Officials in the Finance Ministry said they could not explain the upward adjustment. That story continues on page 3 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Hungry, angry and armed. Crying out, angry guards who have gone 6 months without pay have cried out saying their children dropped out of school, while one said his wife has threatened to leave him because he can no longer support them. And we have a bite here from Police Director for Operation, Asuman Mugenyi, who is saying if they are armed and go on rampage, they can cause embarrassment and also insecurity. They should pay their workers because it is a business and they have a contract to pay. Maybe I can throw this to my panelists a bit because I think also this has been a debate here in the country, especially not really with the pay package for the guards. I don't know if this is a security of a policeman or also this is a security of the guards that we have. There was that debate that was ongoing about whether we should arm our guards here in the country. But looking, if you don't really pay, what sort of insecurity does it portend? Captain, what is happening? See a lot of action here. People are not really concentrating. What is happening?
No, we were discussing something very sensitive.
This is a matter of national security.
These guys need to be disciplined.
Okay, let's hear from Captain Willie.
I think there was a debate and the law was passed and that idea was declined.
It was declined?
Yes.
Okay.
It was not passed in law. But this is how the argument was.
But there was a bill, if you may remind me. Wasn't it the private
Security Industry Regulatory Authority bill?
Authority
bill.
It is now an act. It's an act, okay.
Yes. And actually the authority is already there. So, and the argument was this, people are saying that if we have this thing in Uganda, then why don't we have it here? Some of us who are against this issue were saying we cannot, what obtains in Uganda is not what obtains in this country. Correct. Ugandans have had the history of fighting, and most of the people who are being given guns had the history of being members of the rebel movement. And therefore there's some sort of discipline and the mechanisms that are put in place in Uganda, and I've visited that just to know how it works, is that these are issued to companies, not individuals. And therefore the companies are given responsibility to ensure that when they issue these guns, whoever they issue within or amongst themselves are people who have gone through certain procedures, and therefore the company is responsible for the issuance of these guns. In this country, we know how bad it can be. We give our these people in West Pokot and Turkana, what are they called?
Reservists.
Reservists. And we know that reservists sell those bullets. We know reservists share and hire those guns. And therefore we are saying until we have a system that works and a system that actually informs on how people are going to be responsible to be given these guns as companies, we thought it was not appropriate at that moment. And majority of Kenyans agreed with some of us, and we said, let's not do it now. Maybe when things change in the future, you can have an amendment. But essentially, it's supposed to be given to a security company. A security company should apply. They are given a certain number of arms. They are given regulations on how to manage them, how to store them, and how to ensure that there's safety and usage of these things. So therefore, if we did in this country, and the way we know ourselves, and I'm not saying we are the worst in Africa,
yes,
I think, like we are seeing in pastoral areas, it becomes, what do you call it? It becomes part of the problem of insecurity because we are not able to manage how we are going to use them.
Right, thank you. Let's hear from Dr. Mustafa.
Debarl, having a country awash with guns and arms, and in this case we are talking of roughly, I think, 400,000 watchmen being given guns, does not necessarily mean more security. In fact, it could mean less security, much, much less security. precisely for what Captain Werunga has said, the issue of discipline here. If we can still have guns in official hands being hired out to criminals and crooks, bullets being sold to criminals and crooks to go and harm other Kenyans, what guarantees are we going to have that the 400,000 plus watchmen who would then be issued with guns are not going to resort to the same tack? These are who are paid very low salaries, and some might as well engage in criminality. And if the police are going to do their work well in this country, we don't even need to have these watchmen guarding premises day and night, much less having them armed.
Right, thank you. Let's keep it very brief, because that is not
I want to disagree with my colleagues. I think we have always stated here that our national police service is overstretched in terms of capacity.
Yes.
And we have so many of them being engaged to guard politicians, to guard private institutions like banks.
Yes.
It is high time that the National Police Service Commission and as well as Parliament moved in to enact what we call the protective force, auxiliary services. And this is what happens in many countries. And I think Professor here will tell us that even in the US, you have people who are armed, but they are responsible to the state police. But I would agree to an extent, you give the companies the arms. But then you have people who are trained, and you have a lot of people who've retired from the police service, forest service, armed forces, and they can be part of the response unit. They're not going to start at the buildings, because the problem we have in this country is you have people guarding banks. If there is a trigger or a building, if there is a trigger, then the alarm response unit from the company that is involved will call in the police. Why do they have to call in the police? They perhaps need to have their own response unit, and that's why you have auxiliary guard or protective services, which are auxiliary to the police and part of the police service. And so we cannot continue debating and saying the service is overstretched, and at the same time we are rejecting an avenue where we can get some of the business they're involved in into the realm the private hands and the public.
Okay, all right. Let's hear from Dr. Apollos.
The informal policy of Kenya Police Reservists is that this thing is reserved for North Rift and Northeastern Province. I haven't had a lot of grammar for Kenya Police Reservists in Nyanza, in Western, in Central Province. So it appears like this thing is for pastoralists, and that is where it is wrong. When it is concentrated in Nairobi, the reservists are Asians. So you can see the dubious policy, the way it is not organized properly. So if we have to have police reservists, let them be in Central Province, let them be in Kisumu, Kakamega, not concentrate in Baringo, Laikipia, West Pokot, Turkana, because it shows that it's a pastoralist thing.
Right.
Dubai, I want to agree with Captain Wanderi. Guns don't kill. It is the people that kill. In America, all of us arm ourselves, and though it takes less than 3 minutes, if anybody break my house for police to get there. But I'm also armed. If you break through at certain time, I shoot to kill. Switzerland has a gun culture.
In America or here in Kenya?
In America. In America. I have two captains here. They shoot to kill.
Should be frisking you before you get into the studio.
No. The
Yeah.
issue is Switzerland has a gun culture. Okay, they're all armed. And you don't hear people shooting each other on the street. We need to be able to easily arm and protect our property,
yes,
without going through the proper channel, without worrying about police coming in.
Yes, right, thank you. Maybe we should wind up on it and just look at what we have also on the front page of The Citizen. This is in Tanzania. Undoing Mkapa legacy, mining laws and policies enacted under his stewardship are now blamed for denying Tanzanians trillions of shillings. And you know the story, you can follow it. Also, Magufuli minerals stance dominates hot budget debate is the story you can follow in Tanzania. Still in Tanzania, we have the Mwananchi. JPM aibua waliopuuzwa, wabunge waliojaribu kupinga sheria na mikataba ya madini walinyamazishwa na wengine kuadhibiwa. That is what we have on the front page of the Mwananchi. Still with Swahili, nikishindwa nitakubali. This is what Rais asema yuko tayari kung'atuka mamlakani ikiwa atashindwa uchaguzini kwa njia huru na wazi. That is the story also inside the Taifa Leo. In Rwanda, University of Rwanda in fresh restructuring, and you have also the restructuring target enumerated there on the front page of the New Times in Rwanda. Remember also most of our campuses, they have satellite campuses, or most of our universities here, they have satellite campuses in Rwanda as well. And we have also, I think I've shown you all that we need to show you, but we can go to the editorial cartoons just briefly to show you what we have here quickly. Let me try and put it full screen. This is what is happening with Wiper right now, and this is what Munene has captured for you. The torso and the legs are going every which way. And of course, we can see also the beneficiaries are the Jubilee executive there. They're saying, oh, reject, re-elect Jubilee, Wiper. This is all about Nyenze and what is happening in Wiper right now. We don't need to belabor this. And this is what also Gado has drawn for you today. Right? Reviving the ICC cases, they're going to the graves. We can't always resurrect our winning formula. This was a winning formula way back in 2013. Of course, many are saying that they rode on that sympathy vote. But do they want really to continue with this particular ICC case? This, of course, as we mentioned earlier and we discussed yesterday, that was raised by lawyer Anton Steinberg from Tanzania. Not really from Tanzania, but they are holding a conference in Tanzania on about, I can't remember the content of the conference itself, but this arose, the ICC case. He says that maybe with the incoming regimes over the years, the ICC cases should be revisited. And this is what Gado has drawn for you. Let's see what we have also inside the People Daily. And this is what has been drawn here by Stano. He allies sugar industry, KTM, Palm Paper, Kikomi, Rivertex, and when Jiku, she's in between Jubilee Party and NASA, and of course here lies the ICC case. And we say this is a misrepresentation, isn't it? Just one of you, please. Between NASA and Jubilee. NASA is the one who's digging up the ICC case? No. No.
No.
No.
No, it's not.
So we have Stano has got it all wrong today.
Yeah, I think sometimes you can communicate a different message.
Unless he has a deeper meaning.
You're using graphics.
What will be deeper? Digging up the grave and
in
also...
the grave.
In the grave. It's only the ICC case. Okay. Those are your dailies today. Right, we want also to plumb deeper and get to see what you have to say. This is in regard to your comments also on Twitter, just to read some of them before we continue with the discussion. We were discussing earlier on what is all about the IBC. IBC must demonstrate readiness to conduct these elections. Rigging will not be tolerated. This is what Peter Mwangombe is saying. Also, we have Musinbile MD. Let the media spread the fact on election preparation. Also, we have Frank Orinde. He says, kindly remind Wanderi, no one has called for war, or maybe let him give us evidence. This is what Frank Orinde is saying that. As Steve Odu is saying, if your focus is not fair, Raila has the right to monitor your issues, right? Okay, we have still Musimbile saying, IBC should work to give clear and reasonable results at any tallying center to ensure free and fair election. Also, we have Geoffrey Oma Okoko. Morning, Debarl. I will hope that the panel of bright minds as those seated there will not go personal but delve on issues, he says. And also, we have Chris Owino saying, so Raila reminding IBC to be more vigilant makes him an enemy of Chebukati. Loopholes need to be filled, my friend. And also, we have Mustafa. We put all that in place and provide them with guidelines on their job scope. Should we be blind when they deviate? That is 10 million plus, hashtag 10 billion strong plus one is they're asking you. And of course, we have Kennedy Omogi saying the panel should be at the level of discussing issues raised, not individuals. Most of people are thinking that you're discussing individuals. And we have also Ali Daib from Wajir. Or he's talking about Wajir. Wajir with IDs even US and others can't be 100% perfect. Our security organs need prayers, not blames. And that is what we want to delve deeper on this morning. Just briefly, before we go to international news, we buried 17 policemen last week. That is a huge number. When we're talking about, you know, how our security personnel are stretched, a lot of them, maybe even 10,000, have been allocated to VIPs and, of course, other government officials as well. And these are the auxiliary, service or security personnel as well. Could you comment about what happened in the last 2 weeks with IEDs, you know, just blowing off every which way in the northern part of the country? Captain Wanderi.
Yeah, Debarl, there are two things that arise out of the extensive use of IEDs in northern Kenya by Al-Shabaab. One, Al-Shabaab has come to terms with the fact that they cannot defeat the AMISOM forces, and particularly the KDF contingent in Somalia, in conventional war. They have come to terms with that they have been defeated in terms of the combat capability on the theater of operation on war. And now they have resorted into use of IEDs to now create what you call the national fatigue in terms of the continued deployment of, by Kenya of KDF in Somalia. And their focus now seems to be changing from attacking KDF installations into attacking the national security organs, primarily the police, the National Police Service officers, and particularly those who are in the rural and border patrol unit of the administration police service. What we need to be very clear is this, is that IEDs, by their very nature and use, are indiscriminate weapons. IEDs kill anybody. They kill civilians. They kill people who are not in combat. And therefore, when you see any insurgency or any group or militant group resorting to that, yes, what the group is saying is that now it wants to change its strategy. And we have to look at history, what has happened in the use of IEDs. Hezbollah was able to have Israel withdraw the Israel Defense Forces from South Lebanon by continued use of the IEDs. Now, let us look at Afghanistan and Iraq. Over 60% of the deaths of the Allied forces, in those combat zones, have been, between 2010 and 2015, have been blamed or rather attributed to IEDs. That should now tell you the capacity of the discriminate use of this kind of weapon. And we need to distinguish the kind of IEDs that these fellows are using from the booby traps that are used by the armed forces. The kind of IEDs that they're using are simply very simple tools, and they are made using the very basic technology. But however, it's also clear that these fellows seem to have very good intelligence on the capacity and the kind of even equipment, the kind of the armored personnel carriers that Kenya is using. I consider it, and I have said it in other fora, it was a mistake for the government of Kenya to publicly display armored personnel carriers that we bought for our National Police Service publicly. It was not proper to tell your opponent that this is the kind of equipment I will have, because what that gives Al-Shabaab is information and knowledge to beforehand obtain ordnance that is capable of penetrating armor and using it on the IEDs, because that is the type of IEDs they are using. They are not using the normal IEDs using nails and shrapnel. Yeah. They are using IEDs that have armor penetrating capability, and that means they must be receiving ordnance, either ordnance that is capable of penetrating tanks, either from the heads of the 60 mm mortar or the 84 mm mortar. That means they're able to obtain ordinary military ordnance and then convert it for use into IEDs, which are wreaking havoc on our security forces. Let me say this, it is sad to lose 18 police officers in a span of 3 weeks. It is also very sad for a country to lose anyone trained security or military person, because it takes a lot of time and it is costly to train people and to make sure that they are always prepared and ready for combat. That is the situation we are in, and we need to kind of reassess the way we are focusing on Al-Shabaab.
Thank you. All right, let's hear from Captain
Yes,
Irunga.
let me, I want to share what Wandera said, but I also want to make a clarification to Kenyans to understand. There are two types of vehicles here. There's anti-personnel carriers that normally are supposed to resist those landmines and explosives.
The APCs.
Then we have armored personnel carriers that are supposed to withstand bullets. So we must differentiate the two.
All right. It went way over my head again. Yes.
We have anti-personnel carriers.
Anti-personnel carriers.
Those
yes.
are meant to withstand those explosives, anti-mines, and the mines and whatever.
Yes.
Then we have armored personnel carriers.
Armored personnel
that
carriers.
are supposed to withstand small arms.
Okay.
Now, what the police bought were armored personnel carriers, not anti-personnel carriers. And therefore, depending on the explosive that the insurgents are using, it is very easy for them to throw these things into shrapnels because they are not using bullets. They are using improvised explosives that are basically close to anti-personnel explosives. And therefore, the explosion that comes out of these IEDs is enough to throw these vehicles off the ground because they are not intending to penetrate the armor that is put on these vehicles. Now, what we need to understand is, what was the thinking behind Kenya buying this kind of vehicles? When we had never anticipated this kind of operation against our police officers. Anti-personnel carriers, improvised explosives, people are looking at small arms and RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades. And therefore, I think the thinking was, let's bring in a certain type of vehicle that will protect our askaris against these things. But Debarl, my thinking is this, and one time I sat in this studio somewhere and I said, the country is now entering into a regime of organized crime. And I want to say this one today. We must start looking at what Al-Shabaab is doing, and I think we are now entering what I call low-level insurgency. What is the difference between terrorism and low-level insurgency? When you are creating an insurgent atmosphere, you are creating space to deny government security forces to have space so that you allow yourself to plan and have space to react. The change of tact from what the terrorist Al-Shabaab is doing, to me, they're now trying to create space along our border, to create fear in our police officers, to create fear amongst Kenyans who are living along the border, and to start perpetuating this idea that our police cannot defend us along the border. What does that bring about? Creating space, Kenyans running away, police not having the morale to be able to go and attack, and therefore leaving this to the military. Our military is stretched, and therefore it will be very difficult for us to patrol the whole border unless we come up with another mechanisms on how we are going to deal with this. And slowly, if we don't tackle this thing quickly, Al-Shabaab is going to create space where they can now have time to plan, where they can have time to do their logistics, and they can have time to launch attacks on our police and military installations if the country does not start looking at this new strategy of creating space through some mechanisms of insurgency as opposed to terror activities. To me, that's what the country should be looking at. And in the future, we shall sit somewhere and either agree with what I'm saying or disagree. But we must look at it completely different from what we are seeing.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Professor Naomi Damba, you want to weigh in on the IEDs also, and maybe Apollos? Let's hear from Dr. Mustafa before we come.
Just to pick it from where Captain Irunga has said in terms of the strategy that is being used. First of all, it is sad to lose that number of police officers, and our condolences to the families of the police officers that have lost their lives. One of the major push factors to terrorism is the existence of ungoverned spaces. And in a very strategic way, groups like Al-Shabaab would like to, as they are losing territory in Somalia and other places, they want to increase the ungoverned spaces so that they can operate. in those ungoverned spaces. And then the pull factors come in, the ideology and all that, in those ungoverned spaces. And it's very important that the government actually focus a lot of its attention to make sure that this strategy by groups like Al-Shabaab will actually not work, by deploying, well, the army and better equipment that will be able to withstand this kind of IEDs that are penetrating those armored personnel carriers and other APCs.
All right. So these policemen, they were buried. Have they been buried? Or
Some.
Some
Yes,
have
some,
been buried.
yes, some, yeah.
Why don't we have also the states really acknowledging, you know, the death of the security personnel? Because I see, and we've done a lot of stories where in Great Britain, even if one policeman, remember that policeman that was actually stabbed at the Thames Bridge there, he was given a state honor that actually the flag was flying at half-mast. We have 18 policemen, you know, for heaven's sake, who have died, yet we don't give them any state honor, any state respect, any state funeral burial. This happened to the 40 Barogoi policemen also who died, and they were rotting for 1 week in the thickets. Are we not really paying much premium to our policemen?
I think
let's hear from Professor Naomi Dama before.
Debarl, apart from talking about individual police and what has happened, so let's be serious about securing our border. We didn't go to Somalia to fight on behalf of Somalia. We went in because our border was constantly penetrated by these bad people and to kill and maim our people with impunity. That's the reason we went there. And for a while now, I've been calling for securing the border as the first priority, declaring maybe 25 kilometer zone a no-go zone for any unwanted vehicle or any person that's crossing at a certain time. We need to be serious about this. This idea of control and maintenance for peace in Somalia cannot work for us. I've been calling for rearrangement where we deploy our intelligence within Somalia and withdraw to the border and buffer our border. We can use what Israel used very effectively over Gaza, the balloon. So we will know even the chicken walking and at what time and what direction they're taking. And then use the a fairly simple focus security, which is deter, detect, and destroy. We cannot question when you walk there the wrong time. We cannot question whether you're having a light arm or not. But the point is no one can cross over from Somalia at the wrong time into Kenya. That is what we must do.
Right, let's hear from Dr. Apollos, and as we wind up briefly on that.
Just wondering what the National Counter-Terrorism Center does. Because a lot of our policemen have no knowledge about terrorism. And you can see we have very sophisticated criminals right now with a bias on ideology. We have a lot of traffic policemen disturbing people for driving without licenses. These guys ought to be at the border points. The other day, I heard the president say that we are going to install CCTVs on the highways from Mombasa to Busia to watch us run or overspeed. Why can't they put these CCTVs at border points? Because you can see terrorists are always ahead of us. You know, all the time we are complaining. And these terrorists know, like Dr. Mustafa said, they are in the open and governed places where we don't take our people. We have a lot of concentration of captains in very normal areas. Langata, Kahawa, Isiri, very normal areas. They ought to be in those border points.
Captain there regularly here.
You know, they are here. They should be in Moyale, some place, not speaking about security issues on NTV. So that kind of disjointed planning is what is killing us. Remember, I said these sophisticated criminals are very alert, very sophisticated. They are introverts.
All right, let's hear, well, briefly, you want to wind up on it.
Yes, I think, Debarl, you know, and this might touch some people the wrong way.
Yes.
We have a problem in this country where our leaders have perpetually taken our police officers to be expendables. You know, they are part and parcel of what they want to do. So they die 40, we don't care, we go and bury them. They die 15 at the border, we don't care. Even until the other day, and I'm not, I don't have enough information on this, even the insurance, you know, it took about 6 months. And our police officers will not go to NHIF because NHIF was saying you now have a medical scheme. We got to the medical scheme, it's not working well. So we must have, and I think this is what some of us like Mustafa Ali and Kenandere should start doing. We need to start advocating for our police officers, because there's a tendency in this country of making our police officers, and without thinking, to be expendables. And we don't really care, as much as some of them are not good. And we know we have a few who are not good in the police service.
Yes.
But I think we need to start taking our police officers seriously. Look at the terms of salaries, Debarl. They've been talking about salary increment for the last 40 years.
Yes.
And nobody cares. And these are officers, yes, you say it's voluntary, but they're also there to make a living the same way we joined the military voluntarily, but we knew we were going to earn. Even as I go to die, I'm going to get my salary. And therefore, in this country, we must change this culture of looking at our police officers as expendables. We must start taking them seriously, because as we speak here and laugh, they are walking out there making sure we are safe. But when they die, we don't give a damn. When we are looking for vehicles to take them to the border areas, we don't even ask them to be part and parcel of the technical specifications that they want. Decisions are made in Harambee House. They are given, these are the vehicles you are going to take. They go and die in the bush. Aircrafts are brought in this country. I'm not sure whether they are asked to give their specifications so that they say this is what we want as a police service. People decide in Harambee House, they are given choppers, they go and crash. So I think,
yes,
even as the media,
we need to interrogate.
Yes, we
because,
must interrogate.
But like we had, was it the helicopter that actually crashed in Madare? Was it actually also meant for the terrain of his country? How was it bought? We've not really drilled deeper to ask.
And therefore, we must, those of us who have an opportunity to speak, start ensuring that we speak for the police. We know there are bad ones, and those bad ones we shall deal with.
All right, but I'll be remiss if you don't tell me why we do not honor our policemen when they die.
Yes.
Why our policemen should die in the bushes, and their bodies will still stay there for 1 good week.
You're right.
Without being retrieved. They're rotting in. No half-mast. 18 is a tiny,
it's a big number.
Yeah, it's a big number to actually lose. Yeah. And we've not even had any statement from the Minister of Interior.
Debarl, the other day I made a tweet criticizing General Kaiseri for speaking in Nairobi when incidents of insecurity and policemen have died outside Nairobi. You cannot call a press conference at the stairs of Harambee House when your officers who have laid and put their lives on the line for the defense of the republic and the protection of the civilian component of the population have died in operation zones. That is irresponsible. And that the kind of people then who are in charge, and General Kaiseri at his level has been a commander. He should know this. You don't boost the morale of fighting units by speaking from headquarters. You boost their morale by going to the theater of operation. Having said that, let me say this, that we need also to look at ourselves as a country. I was in a foreign country when a police officer was killed. One police officer was knifed, and I saw what they call sentiment national, the national sentiment of the population. They did not wait for, the population did not wait for the government. They were led by the mayors of the cities. All the cities in this country. When a police officer dies in Nairobi, what does the county government do? The person is ensuring security in your area. So there is a popular movement by the population and elected leaders to honor police officers. That does not happen in this country. And the population needs to get angry because the police officers and even other security officers are our brothers and sisters. And it is not that, let me put it this way. That is a question I was often asked by my colleagues. You are a lawyer. You can go practice, but you are busy flying all around Wajir, Lokichogio, Dabala Fachana, all manner of places. Yes, because at a particular point, somebody has to be on the beat to protect and defend the country. And if we do not, as a people, honor these people, then what we'll have, you know what happened in Baragoi, then in Tana River, and in the subsequent recruitment, yes, you saw young people avoiding to join our security forces. This is a culture that we as citizens must begin. And Captain Werunga is right, that those of us who have an opportunity must tell the people who are in leadership, particularly those in charge at Harambee House, yes, that it is high time to proactively have groups and institutions that speak, yes, for the police, yeah, for the police officers. It is even right to allow the police officers to have their welfare. In other countries they have.
All right, so we have the police reforms, and we have the police, the National Police Service Commission, led by Honorable, remind me his name again, John Kavuludi, yes, right? But what are they doing?
You know,
in such an instance like this, what is the commission? Because that is meant to be like the human resource, right, department of the police.
You must understand this. The totality of our democracy and the totality of the national responsibility interferes with most of the things that were created by the Constitution to make our police service more modern. Now, Kavuludi's team, you know, as we speak, they cannot have a quorum unless the 3 police officers attend their meeting. We lost the vice chairperson, she was not replaced. We lost Major Muya because of sickness, he was not replaced. And therefore, as civilians, we have people who cannot make a quorum unless we have the 3 police officers, IG and his 2 deputies to make a quorum. That could be deliberate. We don't know why, because the late Colombile died many years ago. Muya resigned many years ago. And therefore, as a strategy, I think it's just to try and make it moribund so that it does not interfere. Number 2, you remember there was a change, an amendment in the National Police Service Act, yes, where the independence of the Inspector General was removed. And the President was given powers to appoint an Inspector General. That again was removing powers from the National Police Service Commission and take it back to the executive. So all these things make it a fairly moribund organization. So even most of the activities you see are not really part and parcel of what we thought should be part of the police reforms.
Thank you.
And when you look at their last document talking about the current state of reforms, Debarl, you realize that we are still a long way to go. And probably it's deliberate, because you cannot do reforms without funding those reforms. And if the Treasury cannot fund those reforms, then you realize that there's nothing you can do much, even if you're a commission created by the Constitution to assist the police advance.
Thank you. All right. Maybe Dr. Mustafa, you want to weigh in briefly?
I know we should be talking about Qatar before we leave today. Yeah. But on this issue of speaking for the policemen and women in this country, I think we've done that before. And we want to repeat that today. I don't want to underline what, or rather, I don't want to re-discuss what my colleagues have said, but the issue of funding here comes into play, and this is what we need to emphasize and underline, that we cannot continue paying our police officers in the manner that we are paying them, and then handle them in the manner that we are handling them, and still expect them to provide the kind of security that this country needs. We have messed up our politics in this country. And we continue to do that and allocate so much money into politicking in this country. We've said it before, these positions of MCAs, and they should not be paid. If it's a question of funding, scrap all those positions, these MCAs that are just yapping in these county assemblies, and put this money to the police and other security agencies. We don't need men, you know, we just need a few of political leaders and politicians in this country.
Thank you.
And we need to take care of our police and overall security better.
And maybe the abiding question will be then, we actually stash a lot of money for the security of this country. I think from the exchequer and going by the budgets that we had, police or security as a whole was actually dedicated, or money was stashed away for that particular department, running into billions. So we want to also drill deep and see how that also is being spent. Maybe these are probing questions Kenyans should be asking.